since 1961. And we just want them to win a damn Super Bowl before we die. Welcome to Before We Die with Jesse and Thor on Purple Daily and Score North.
What's going on? Oh, look at me out of the frame, but here we go. You know, I'm just trying to make you guys look good. It's a good start. We're off to a roaring start. I had mentioned to you guys, we had plumbers show up at my door. That's how bad pornos start. But here we are to talk a little bit of Vikings on your September 1st, Thursday edition of Before We Die on Purple Daily and Score North. I'm Jesse Pierce. He's Thor Nystrom. Joining us today, Declan Goff, because Ross, he likes to come and go as he pleases. Apparently, that's just fine. We allow him to do that. But how you boys doing today?
We're doing great, man. The Quasi has been wheeling and dealing.
Right?
Even just since Monday when we last recorded, there's been a million different transactions. There's been multiple trades for post-hype sleepers from TCU. Yeah. All kinds of things going on. So it is a very exciting time, and we're the regular season. We're almost there.
Exactly. Preseason done. We're looking forward to the regular season. And as Thor just mentioned, lots to talk about. No lack of content. Let's start with the big news. Jalen Reagor gets moved to the Minnesota Vikings from the Philadelphia Eagles. Everyone recalls that name, not only because he was a first rounder, but he was the first round pick that allowed the Minnesota Vikings to go in and snatch Justin Jefferson, which has clearly worked out for Minnesota much better than it worked out for Philly. Guys, initial reaction to that. I mean, a lot of jokes were easily made about that because Justin Jefferson went one pick behind Rhaegor, who has not really performed, but I liked the move initially. I like guys that are going out there making moves, and Quasi's doing just that.
I like the move too. Yeah, I wrote some stuff on Twitter about this yesterday, but some Vikings fans seemed a little bit lower on it because I think they were a little bit higher maybe on Ihmir Smith-Marsette than I was, and it seems like they're lower on Rhaegor than I am. But I watched a lot of Rhaegor at TCU. That what he needed when he came to the NFL, that he had a very, very specific evaluation because at TCU, he had played with a procession of quarterbacks who were not accurate. And what Jalen Reagor is, he's magic with the ball in his hands. His north-south explosion is absolutely ridiculous. And when he cuts in the open field, when he's going like just hyper speed down the field, it is very, very hard to stay with him. Like defenders get crossed up, they take bad angles. That's why he had all these explosive touchdowns when you can get the ball in his hands. But in college, he never played with an accurate quarterback, played with three different starters. Like every single year they were cycling through him. None of them were particularly accurate. And so the book on him coming into the NFL, it was if he can find a team that has a super accurate pocket passer that can hit him on the hands, that's how you're going to open up all these opportunities for him that make him so dangerous. It's just that when he got drafted, it didn't exactly go that way. And not only that, he should have been playing in the slot the entire time. The Eagles made the mistake of trying to force him into being an outside receiver, right, which sort of compounded it, where he was not only playing out of position, but he was playing, with personnel that didn't really fit his game. Kirk Cousins is by far the most accurate quarterback that he has ever played with. By far and away, it is not even close. Yeah. And so this is a guy coming here. Cousins is going to be able to play up his game, tick up Rhaegor's game. I think also with the Vikings' brain trust, their offensive brain trust, I think that's going to tick it up too and scheming him into advantageous situations.
And I mean, all reports that I have come across out of Philadelphia camp, it sounds like Rhaegor actually had one of the best training camps of his career thus far. So, I mean, that's promising. He's going to get some reps, and it's an immediate upgrade at the wide receiver position. I know you had mentioned Ihmir Smith-Marsette. A lot of people disappointed about that cut, but I think this is an upgrade because there is just that natural change of scenery that could absolutely help Jalen, especially learning under Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. You look at KJ Osborne, who is now solidified as that wide receiver 3, but he learned under just those guys and was able to develop into this guy. So maybe that's exactly what Jalen needs. The other thing that really excites me in particular, the punt returning. That's a big asset that Jalen Reagor really brings to the Minnesota Vikings. For me, that's the biggest excitement I get out of that move they made yesterday.
1,000%. Yeah. And they had stopped trusting Smith-Marsette with some of that stuff. And so Rhaegor, the special teams utility, you're getting him as much for that or more than even the receiving utility, especially in year one. But, we'll see what the Vikings end up being able to turn Rhaegor into as a receiver, but they're for sure getting him for the immediate utility as the returner. Smith-Marsette, he had sort of frustrated the coaches with some of the fumbling and stuff like that. That Rhaegor, interestingly, he has had some fumble problems as well on the punt returns, but he's absolutely more explosive than Smith-Marsette is. You can just go back and look at like their tests coming out. Rhaegor tested in the his spark percentile was in the 93rd percentile. Smith-Marsette, he was in the 68th percentile with his athletic composite. And not only that, Rhaegor, he didn't test as well as some of the confirmed tests that we knew that he had from TCU. So I actually think he was a bit more athletic than he tested. For instance, he had tested in the high 4.2. He had a laser time 40 at TCU of 4.29, but he ended up running like a 4.47 confirmed at the combine. A couple different things like that. On tape, when he gets the full head of steam, he's a 4.3 guy all day. That explosion, and specifically in the first 10 yards, we've seen Kwesi prioritize players who are very quick out of their stance or with the first step, and in those first 10 yards, the super explosive athletes. Rhaegor fits that mold to a T.
Exactly. And going back to Marsette and a possible reason for his cut, do you guys buy into the hype that there was some locker room issues with some certain players and kind of that culture? Again, something that Kevin O'Connell has been very vocal and adamant about changing. Do you guys buy into any of that? I know, Dex, you had weighed in a little bit on the Twitter sphere on that situation. Do you think that was his undoing a little bit?
No, and to be honest, I saw the tweet come out from that weird like half bot, half person account. So I didn't buy it for a second, and just, talking to Judd and talking to other people that cover the team, that wasn't the case at all. It's a calculated risk from Kwesi to move on from, a second year wide receiver who had shown some promise and had a nice training camp. But if you're looking at it just from the stock side of it, Jalen Reagor was a 20th overall pick 2 years ago. To Thor's point, he was a very explosive player at TCU, and now he gets to play under Kirk Cousins, who is by far, the best quarterback he's ever played with. I like Jalen Hurts as a QB, and he might still have a future, but he's more of a gadget guy, and he's going to get in space. He's not a true pocket passer. To Thor's point, there's probably something to be also unlocked with Rhaegor in this Viking system that he hasn't experienced with Philadelphia, and probably didn't experience at TCU either.
Right. Again, the biggest flash being Rhaegor, now a Minnesota Viking. Excited to see what this new offense in general. I am getting more and more excited, you guys, about the offense. You look at the backs you look at the receivers, you're throwing everything at them in this new system. I might be heading more toward Thor's vision of 12 wins than I was a week ago. Anybody else's mentality changing just yet? Or am I being too optimistic this early on before actually seeing game one?
I'm happy you're starting to see the light, Jesse. I'm happy that we're getting you onto the right side here. No, I'm standing firm at 12 wins. This is a 12-5 team and is going to win the North.
Yeah. I mean, I just bought a purple shirt yesterday, so that could have been it too. It's just starting to really bleed into me. You guys will be happy. And by the way, I have a lot of Vikings gear, guys. I do want to assure everybody I have it. It's just not season yet. I will start wearing my Vikings gear when the season comes. It's a lot of sweatshirts and all that good stuff. Back to the 53 roster that is set. A couple of different waiver moves. Let's go defensive lineman Armon Watts. Did that surprise you guys that he was going to be with the Chicago Bears picking him up pretty quickly?
That one was more so you had the essentially what was the swap of you trade for Ross Blacklock, and then in turn you release Watts, and then in the same as the same similar thing of like you trade for Rhaegor, you release Smith-Marsette. I was way more surprised about the Watts and Blacklock shuffle. The Rhaegor Smith-Marsette one, that one totally jived to me. That sort of taking this stab on this post hype sleeper. Ross Blacklock for sure would also fit sort of that designation of like a potential post-hype sleeper. But Watts has been a better player, on the objectively than Blacklock to this point. And Blacklock was another really interesting prospect out of TCU, just like Rhaegor, where the circumstances of his situation were not advantageous for him. And so you were hoping when he came to the NFL that, all of a sudden he was going to find the right situation. But just like Rhaegor, he ends up going to a situation that was not good for him. He was in Houston and was sort of stranded out there. But the book on Blacklock was, this is sort of similar. NFL Vikings fans will know the name Ed Oliver, the defensive tackle for the Buffalo Bills, who was a first-round pick. Ed Oliver in college at Houston, Houston played in this 3-3-5 defense where Ed Oliver played the nose guard. And Ed Oliver, he is not a nose guard. He's right around 300 pounds. You wouldn't want him traditionally lining up over the center. But Houston would use Ed Oliver as their entire pass rush. They would not blitz. They'd drop 8 guys into coverage. Well, what ended up happening was opposing offensive lines could double and triple team Ed Oliver every single play. It was a very similar thing to what happened to Blacklock when he came back, because he had an injury early in his career at TCU and he missed the season. When he came back and he started to show the explosion and shooting the gaps and everything like that, started piling up the pressures and the TFL and the sacks and stuff like that. It was a similar thing where teams just started to their offensive lines. People were just, meet at Blacklock essentially, where it was double and triple teaming because TCU was only rushing, 3-4 guys, and Blacklock was the nose guard in what was Gary Patterson's 3-3-5 defense. So he was totally played out of position. He's more of a 3 technique if you were running a 4-3, but with the Vikings, he has the frame to be one of those 3 interior defensive linemen in a 3-4 system because he's kind of a rangy kid as well, 6'4", 305. They're banking on his upside. He hasn't shown it to this point, but again, he's been in bad circumstances. Blacklock's, his PFF grades, his first 2 years in the NFL, it's like 30.2 and 50.4, which are precipitously low. But I think the Vikings, sort of like Rhaegor, you're banking on a guy, these guys that were in bad situations in college. You wanted them to be in a better situation in the NFL. They did not find it. And now they're coming to essentially try to rescue them. And we'll see how it pans out.
Right. And Blacklock had a smaller sample than Watts did. I mean, Watts ranking 21st amongst defensive tackles in the PFF pass rush. Blacklock similar though in some areas, again, with that smaller sample size. I think the biggest thing, in my opinion, and the reason that Minnesota went after this move, despite Watts probably being the better player with a little bit higher upside, there's that cap space now. And I think maybe Blacklock now fits into Ed Dontel's scheme a little bit better too. I think we have to consider that. Like, what does his defensive mindset look like with the added, a little bit of extra cap space now available? Do you think Kwesi has something in mind? Is he working on something? Is he scheming something? Or do you think he just wants to have that cushion to play with and have it there in case something comes across his desk?
Well, this is the interesting thing, right? Because, amid all these different moves that Kwesi was making, releasing people, trading people, all this different stuff, there was this cap room that was created. The Vikings have more cap flexibility today than they did 3 or 4 days ago.
Right.
And so you naturally started to think, especially on that defensive line, when Armon Watts, he had been one of the 3 projected starters on that defensive line. He just had been, right? And the Vikings, I think that, they viewed him as that. And not only that, I think during camp, they viewed him essentially as a lock to make the roster because they were withholding him from preseason games, which you wouldn't have done if he was fighting for the roster spot. But, do you view Blacklock as a guy who can come in and start immediately? I doubt that. Blacklock is more of the situational. You want him in on pass rushing downs because, again, he's sort of like a riverboat gambler who's trying to time up the snap, and then he just shoots the gaps really quick. So that's where you want him for. More of a situational player, I think, in year one when you're trying to salvage value out of him. So what it becomes is, now that you've taken the starter out, if Blacklock's not that, is this extra cap room you created going to be is the plan that it's going to be delineated towards this, another starter for the defensive line? And Ndamukong Suh is the name on, the tip of everybody's tongue. Mm-hmm. We'll see what ends up going on there. There's been different rumors that are surrounding his camp. You never really know exactly what's going on, but the sort of what has been forwarded publicly is the reason that he hasn't signed yet is his price tag has been too high. Mm-hmm. We'll see if the Vikings can end up matching that, but Ndamukong Suh absolutely would come in the day the second he signed, the minute he signed, he would be starting next to he would be on the 3-man front as a starter.
Exactly. And that's a name that's been floated around in connection with Minnesota for some time now. Again, just knowing that price tag is so high, but an immediate impact. I mean, he was a former Nebraska person as a Cyclone. I used to hate playing against him as at Iowa State, but there we go. And not me playing against him, obviously, guys. Continuing on with the roster and the moves made, the people that were selected, I found it particularly interesting that they just kind of blew up that 2021 draft class. Was it that bad of a draft class that they were like, now we're going to get rid of everybody? Obviously, Kellen Mond, we knew that was kind of foreseen, but everybody else, like, they were like, nah, forget this class, wash it clean, we're done with it. Was that a surprise to you at all, Thor?
It wasn't. I didn't love a lot of the picks as they were happening that year. There'd been an accumulation of picks, so of course we got a whole bunch of them. But this is not a hindsight thing for me. You know, like I do the NFL draft stuff for my full-time job, but like I didn't like the Mond pick. He was a 4-year starter in the SEC who his game had never progressed. He was stagnant the entire time he was there. Seemed like a concerning thing when you're projecting him to the NFL. And then, like, you know, for instance, Chaz Surratt, he had been a converted quarterback. He had piled up a lot of tackles, which is why I think they decided to believe in him. And he had decent testing numbers. But the problem with him was he was an athletic linebacker who was terrible in coverage. And a part of this was he was new to the position, I think. And so you were sort of trying to be like, well, can we teach him that? But it's hard to teach a guy instincts. Right. And so he was just always sort of lost there. And then you were thinking about his utility as a run stopper, because if he can't cover, that's the only other thing he's got. And he had these really, really short arms. So you knew that his tackling radius was going to be way less than the average NFL linebacker, which should have concerned you because he had a whole bunch of missed tackles at North Carolina. He did pile a whole bunch up as this north-south player who was always just flying downfield. But he missed a whole bunch when, you know, in those couple of years that he was starting. Just a couple examples, but I think Spielman, with all those late picks that he had accumulated in recent years, he made some decisions that others would not have made. And so it's not surprising the referendum the new administration made on those guys. It's also not surprising that the new administration is prioritizing the players that they wanted to bring in, their guys, as opposed to Spielman's.
Right. Well, and that 2021 draft class was weird anyway, because you had so many players opting to go back to college because they had that extra year of eligibility because of COVID. So you're absolutely right. Like the picks in general from the Vikings and plenty of other teams were just kind of wonky because you were working with what you had. We had mentioned Kellen Mond, obviously waived by the Minnesota Vikings, doesn't clear waivers, which I had projected on Monday's show. And the Cleveland Browns are the lucky team that thinks they can fix him. Is Kellen Mond going to be a player for the Cleveland Browns, or is he just going to kind of be there and have a similar role that he had here in Minnesota?
In a word, no. What's the term? Bridge to nowhere. Kellen Mond is, there's a famous Fran Fraschilla line. Fran Fraschilla is one of the ESPN's NBA draft guys, and he does all the international prospects. And what year they asked him about this? I'm not an NBA guy, so I'm not going to remember the guy's name, but his name was like Bruno Cabale or something like that. And they asked Fran Fraschilla, you know, what's your opinion about this guy? And he goes, Bruno's a year away from being a year away. Kellen Mond is a year away from being a year away.
I like that. I think that's fair. I mean, you also saw Sean Mannion, I believe, get snagged by somebody. Does that surprise you guys? I think Seattle, right?
He got picked up by Seattle. Which
he's going to go in there, back up Russell Wilson, probably, who signed that lucrative little contract. Or no, Russell Wilson's not in Seattle, guys. Never mind.
He's in Denver.
Denver. He's got paid.
Scrap that whole thing. People are coming for me now. I know he's not in Seattle. He's in Denver. Signed his big contract extension in Denver. It's still new.
Sean Mannion found, you know, I had said many times on the show already that Sean Mannion just categorically should not be in the NFL anymore. He found the one quarterback situation where they could justify bringing him on to not the active roster. They have him on the taxi squad, but they're active quarterbacks. It's Geno Smith and Drew Lock. And for some reason, they decided not to take a quarterback in this past class, even when they could have when they were filtering down the board. I'm pretty sure it's because they want to get a high pick next year and then take Bryce Young or CJ Stroud or whatever. But Mannion actually, we'll see. I mean, Drew Lock really, to me, is not really an NFL quarterback either. Geno Smith should definitely be a backup. Maybe Sean Mannion can find himself back on an NFL field in 2020. It's a crazy world.
It is a crazy world. Again, guys, repeat, I know Russell Wilson is not with Seattle. That's what he's been there for too long. It's just ingrained in my head until I see him throw a couple in Denver. Then it'll get through. So don't hate in the comments, please, or do whatever. It's fine. I'll live. Anybody else that we're excited? 20 new Minnesota Vikings making the roster, which I think is super exciting. We've talked about Ed Ingram, obviously being kind of top of that pick. Anybody else, Thor, that you're particularly excited about for having made the cut? And, Ty Chandler, another one, obviously, that we're all very excited about the future. Probably not likely immediate impact this year, unless there are injuries, which fingers crossed don't happen. But another player that I think was well-deserved of making that final cut.
Well, I think we should meditate on Ed Ingram for a second.
Yeah.
Not only did he win that job, he pulled away. He did it emphatically. It was like the racehorse that at the end he pulled way ahead of Jesse Davis, right? I mean, Jesse Davis started that race ahead, and Ingram just, by the middle of camp, he had pulled even and then pulls away. The Vikings end up on cut day, or the day before. No, it was cut day. They ended up trading Jesse Davis to Pittsburgh for a conditional late round pick. I think it should vest into a round 7. So they'll end up getting that back. But that move was more it was bigger from the perspective of Ed Ingram for Vikings fans than anything to do with Jesse Davis, because that would have been your insurance policy against Ed Ingram. They clearly don't think that they need one, which shows how highly that they're viewing Ed Ingram right now. So that's a great thing.
It is. It's super exciting. And again, well-deserved. A player that separated himself and I think is going to be a huge asset to Minnesota. I mean, it's not very often you see rookies like that be such an impact. And clearly he's the go-to guy. I want to wrap up this week's episode because it is opening preseason game, exhibition game for our Minnesota Gophers against Jerry Kill. The drama surrounding that's going to be fun. Are you guys going? You guys checking it out? We tailgating? What's the Gopher plan today?
We're tonight we're having the boys over for some grilling, maybe for some adult beverages, and to watch PJ Fleck absolutely run the score up. Jerry Kill just showed no mercy. PJ.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit. I mean, we want to see just a rout, but what's our score prediction then?
So the line is like. It's like 35-36. I'm going to take the Gophers to cover this one. I think Peach is really going to have it in. I think he's going to be sticking his finger in all Jerry Kill's wounds from over the years, and stuff like that. So I'm going to go Gophers by 42. Maybe we'll say 52-10. How about that?
Wow, I like it. Dex,
Wow.
What's your plan? What are your Gopher brass doing?
Well, as a proud graduate of the St. Cloud State University, go Huskies, who no longer have a football program. I've never been a huge Gopher football guy, but I'll probably dabble. I'll probably dabble in some seltzers, dabble in some tequila here tonight. I have Friday off, so I can absolutely watch this 5-hour college football game, because that's how long it takes to play a damn college football game. So I just want to see PJ Fleck and the Gophers not run the ball like they're Navy, essentially, Thor. Like, they ran the ball more than any team in the college football last year that wasn't an armed service team, i.e. Navy and an Army and whatnot. So pass the ball a little bit more. I want to see my guy Tanner Morgan air it out. Just do that.
I do. And I'm excited, and this is going to maybe upset Gopher fans, but I'm going to say it. Kind of ready for the Tanner Morgan era to just wrap up. Like, I'm excited that this is just going to kind of be the end of it.
That's one of your best takes, Jesse.
Thank you.
We're all with you.
Yes. Right? Like, I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, he's still there. Like, no shade against the kid, but I'm just ready for that era to be done. But I am super excited. Do we think the Gophers are going to be successful this year? I know we talked a little bit about when we were out at the state fair. We've talked about it a little bit throughout the course, but again, college football's here, which excites me as much as the NFL. So that's why we're wrapping up today's Before We Die with a little college football talk.
Yeah, I think in my projected numbers I do for work, I think I have the Gophers finishing with 8 wins. So, an 8-4 kind of a season. See if you can tick up maybe a little bit above that. But I think as a baseline heading into the season, the expectation should be 8-4. This is a quality team. You're bringing back Morgan, which, he certainly is not an NFL talent, but you've seen when he has supporting talent around him, his game ticks way up, like 2019 with Bateman and Johnson. That was his best season, obviously. And now you get Mo Ibrahim back. The Gophers have the best center in the nation in John Michael Schmitz. You have to like their receiving core. Chris Autman-Bell is probably going to get drafted into the NFL. I like that Wright kid too. So they have a lot of different stuff going on. We'll see how they can figure out the defense. After you lost Mafe and after you lost like a Tom Wolf, that's on the Vikes now and some of those different guys. But if they can figure out that defense, and they should, their defensive coordinator is super duper underrated. Like he was on Bruce Feldman dropped on the Athletic last day or two of it was like the 40 assistant coaches who are going to be running the coaching carousel next off season. Joe Rossi, the defensive coordinator for the Gophers, was on that list because his defense, it seems like every year, no matter who's coming back, they're like top 15, top 20, which is a different feel for Gopher fans after living through the Tim Brewster eras and stuff like that.
I'm going to poke the bear. Are the Gophers stronger at center than the Minnesota Vikings?
Oh, that's a good one.
They gotta
absolutely are.
Right? Like, I'm thinking about it since you brought that up. I'm like, I trust the Gopher center position and the center depth better than I trust the Vikings center position and depth.
Well,
right now.
I'll put it this way: in April, coming up in next April, when it's the draft, whenever it's the John Michael Schmidt slot, whatever team takes him, the Vikings, Kwesi could call right then and be like, "Hey, we'll give you Bradbury for John Michael Schmidt." He would get hung up on so fast, so fast.
Poor Garrett Bradbury. I kind of want to get Bradbury on and let him speak his piece and just like prove to me and tell me why we need to be nicer.
Maybe he should start running the Twitter feed like Chandon Sullivan and going after everybody that insinuates he had a bad camp.
Exactly.
Be like, check the receipts. Look at the camp tape. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I like it. You said 8-4 for the Gophers, so that has them making a bowl game, right? Which bowl are they getting then? Do we think? Are we getting a big bowl? Or are they going big bowling?
They're not going big bowling, but it'll be like one of those fun ones. It's on like December 30th, like something like that.
Yeah.
So like more fun than the Meineke Car Bowl. Like how much fun are we gonna have on bowl games?
Well, Meineke Car Bowl is fun. I always love the Mayo Bowl too. They give you the Mayo bath, the coach after you win the game.
God.
That's a fun one.
It's so gross.
Yeah.
Awful.
So gross, dude.
There's so many. There's not a bad bowl game, is the way that I see it. And the Gophers should get into a solid like tier 2 type bowl game.
Okay, I like it. I remember watching the Gophers, and I think it was their first bowl game in quite some time, and Iowa State's first bowl game in quite some time. They had to face off in the Insight Bowl in Arizona. Iowa State, I think, ended up winning too, which was like bittersweet for me because, it's my team versus my team, and that's how that was. But Insight Bowl was just a boring name. I kind of like the Mayo now because I do want to see somebody get dumped. It's so gross. That smell is never coming out. By the way, it's not.
It's hilarious. And by the way, I'm looking at my Gopher sheet right now. I have them at 7.7 wins. So basically 8-4. The non-con is a joke. It's about as easy as you can get. You got New Mexico State, then you have an FCS team, then they get Colorado, who's probably they're like one of the worst 3 Power 5 teams right now. I think Colorado's going to go 1-11 this year. I think their head coach is going to get fired during the fall. So the Gophers for sure are going to be 3-0. Coming out of that, and then in the Big Ten play, you sort of see, but looks like they're avoiding Ohio State, which is always good news. So yeah, I mean we'll see how it shakes out, but I'm seeing an 8-4 team here.
I think it. I like it. Roll the boat, Sky go Gophs. That's what we do here. Again, this is Before We Die on Purple Daily and Score North, talking Vikings, but we had to sneak in a little college football. I'm a big college football fan. Dex, I know, hates it because it's too long. Whatever, it's fine, right? Why? Really? That's the reason? Is that the sole reason?
It's too long. Well, it's too long, and my Sundays in the fall are all about football, right?
Fair.
So I'm not going to waste my Saturday doing the same thing.
But you just
Not
do it
gonna
outside.
do that.
Set up an outside situation.
I love, if it's a tailgate, I'm in.
Yes.
Like if it's a tailgate and there's drinking involved, then that changes the entire dynamic, okay? It changes everything else.
I mean, that's sports, right? Like
yes,
that's
it's true.
Go. That's just sports. Again, talking Vikings, 10 days until the Vikings open up against the Green Bay Packers. A lot of exciting moves, I think. And I think the moves that Kwesi's made, it shows his dedication to the team. I'm going to always bring it back to hockey, guys. Reminds me of Bill Guerin just a little bit, not quite in the personality department. Billy Guerin wins that out against anybody. I'll put him up against anybody for GM's personality, but willing to make some of those moves, willing to make some of those cuts that are going to be better for the team, better for the culture. It does have me even more excited than I was 2 weeks ago. We'll see what happens. Let the countdown begin. Thank you all for joining us for another Before We Die episode. Episodes released every Monday and Thursday on Purple Daily and Score North, wherever you watch and listen. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, all the good stuff. Check out all of our friends. You saw the schedule released this week by Phil Mackey. Boone's back. He's got his coverage. We got Randy's rants. All of the really fun content that you guys want. Always love hearing what you guys want. Let us know. We'll do it. Let's wrap it up with our Before We Dies, guys. Before we die, I will see the Gophers play in a Rose Bowl.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's,
yeah.
Are we going to get that before a Super Bowl for the Vikings?
Yes. It'll be before the Vikings get a Super Bowl too.
Mine, this isn't a prediction. This is just something I want before I die. And I want this before November. I want there to be chatter of, can Jalen Reagor win Comeback Player of the Year? Like, wow. I just want to hear that sentence once. I want to toss out like, oh my gosh, what a season. Is he going to be under consideration for Comeback Player of the Year? That's what I want before I die.
That's positive.
Before I die, I will not be losing sleep if Ihmir Smith-Marsette balls out with the Bears or Packers. Like it's not going to do anything for me. The Vikings got their wide receivers. It's all good. And before I die, I'm not going to lose sleep over that. There's so many other things I can lose sleep out with the Vikings. Not going to be that one.
It's not going to be that one because everybody else will. I can already see the meltdown in the future, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh God, yeah. All right. Well, there we go. Again, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Before We Die. Have a great week and weekend, and we'll see you on Monday. Bye.
Cool.